Hello and welcome back to Multifamily Elevated. I am your host, Suzanne Hobson, and I'm very pleased to bring back a prior guest and someone that you may be very familiar with as his face is out there in multifamily. His name is David Holland, CPM, and he's an expert at the intersection of property management and disaster response planning. With a career spanning multifamily operations, restoration, and tech-driven solutions, he specializes in helping apartment communities navigate risk mitigation and emergency preparedness. As the Director of Strategic Accounts for the Capital Region at Belfour Property Restoration, he leverages his deep industry knowledge and extensive network to provide strategic guidance in disaster response and recovery. Beyond his professional role, David is an active industry leader, serving as governing counselor for IREM and an advocate for sustainable housing solutions. And I consider him a friend as well. So he is just anxious to share what he's been up to as it relates to a topic that I'm very passionate about. This episode is about identifying your market niche and really the importance of making sure that you've identified your customer. All right, let's jump in.
Hello and welcome to Multifamily Elevated. My name's Suzanne Hobson, and I am super excited to talk to you about vision, people, and execution, and how you can utilize this information to elevate you and your team and your experience in multifamily. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, giving you the latest and greatest news and content across our multifamily sector. So let's jump in. Enjoy this episode of Multifamily Elevated and enjoy the climb.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Multifamily Elevated. Today we have back on our show David Holland. So excited to see you again, David. Welcome.
Hey, Suzanne.
I know it's been 6 months, right? Since
6 months, yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing what can change in that amount of time, right?
You got that right.
Oh, it's really good to have you aboard to talk about niche and how important that really is. And I just have this one question. What's the difference between niche and niche? Is there a difference, or can people just say it? Okay.
I wish I could tell you. I was like checking, how do I properly pronounce this? And I'm going to go with niche, but you go with whichever one works best for you.
Perfect. Well, I was hoping you'd be able to tell me about your niche journey to start with.
Sure. So I have been in the world of multifamily for about 9 years at this point, 8.5, 9 years. Started in property management, and then after 7 or so years of day-to-day operations property management, I switched over to the dark side of the industry. I switched over to the vendor side. Was at a SaaS company for a couple of years, got that started up, and then I relatively recently, about 4 months ago or so, switched to a new company, and now I do disaster planning and property restoration, and I'm a sales guy. I mean, no matter what fancy title you come up with, it boils down to sales. And niche is a big part of sales, especially with a super broad focus like disaster restoration, right? We help all kinds of, if you're residential or commercial or office, industrial, anyone that has 4 walls and a roof. And that's a lot of potential industries, right? You have schools, you have airports, you have facilities, you have malls, you have multifamily, you have student, you have senior, you have any possible vertical that's out there is someone with 4 walls and a roof. But what's really nice about my company is we try to, put the salespeople into the vertical or into the subset that they know the best. They work in their niche. And my niche, multifamily. I have enough connections in the industry and impact with the local market that's where I live, right? The majority of my LinkedIn connections are multifamily. So when you think about niche, happy to chat from a sales perspective. What's on your mind?
Yeah. So as I've been talking to companies, I found that this is an area that is sort of gone back to. It's not really part of the strategy at the beginning. It's almost like throwing the marketing onto whatever plan there is to make something happen in the moment. And we don't always think about who our true customer is. And we're really throwing things, like that dart that I was talking about. And
Yeah.
It's several dartboards, and which just makes what we're trying to do even harder. And so marketing niche and really being able to identify that, when I ask people, what's your marketing niche? Not everybody can tell me, right? So what's your thoughts on marketing niche, and how's it been important in what you do? Even if you're in one vertical of multifamily, how's that important?
I mean, you could certainly just spray in every direction. That's a strategy, and it might eventually work for you. You might catch someone in the crossfire just by happenstance, but it's not really the most targeted way to get to who your target customers are, your niche. So what I like to do is the company I'm with is long and established and gigantic. So there's already a myriad of established accounts, and then there's everyone else in the world that's not an account. So you could basically drop companies into two buckets. They already work with us or they don't already work with us. I guess there's technically a third bucket of we worked with them at some point and we didn't like it, so we ended the relationship and now we don't want to work with them in the future, but we'll just ignore that third bucket. So the first thing that I came across, actually, I had one of my supervisors say to me, like, hey, what's your plan to catch the low-hanging fruit? And I'm like, that's okay, fair question, right? I think the plan is just reach out to our existing companies and introduce myself, right? If they're having a disaster and they need to know who to call and they don't know because the employees have turned over, that's a pretty low-hanging fruit, So the tricky part is that that's not like 5 phone calls. That's not like 10 phone calls. That's like 1,700 phone calls, right? And that's not 1,700 phone calls to 1,700 people. That's 1,700 companies. Each company could have thousands of people. And I don't want to spend all of my life just making introductory phone calls because eventually that's going to get really boring, right? So what I did is LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which if you're in any kind of sales, you need to have Sales Navigator. It's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. All right. Get really specific because everyone's on LinkedIn. And if I just said, I want to talk to building operators or property managers in New York, there's like 300,000 results. That's too much, right? And that's just one state. But if you get more and more and more and more specific, I only want specifically facilities managers. I only want people with this many years of experience. I only want people that are also involved in IRM or an NAA. Like any way that you can slice it up and find the specific subset of people that you really need to get in front of, the better off you're going to do because, a conversation where I'm reaching out to someone who is involved in 2 associations that I'm also part of, we have something to talk about. Whereas if I have no connection to that person, it's like, hi, nice to meet you. Who are you? There's no familiarity. There's no warm connection. You're going to do a lot better if you have that you're working into that niche.
Well, you're taking this like in a different direction that I love, and I want to stay on it for a moment because there's really 2 things we're talking about. One is an overarching strategy, marketing strategy for companies. And then there's the salesperson, right? And the salesperson who has to think about who their target market is and how do they best market to them. And what you just said was, about the low hanging fruit. I love it. You're right. And we don't oftentimes think about referrals, right? As an opportunity, even if we're calling people just to maybe introduce ourselves and they're already a client or they're already a customer, they're already a resident, being able to say, do you know anybody else who might be able to benefit from our services and really reaching out in that way. You also said something about LinkedIn, which I could talk about all day. Sales Navigator is a pretty cool tool. And if we're talking to people in sales in general and you don't have Sales Navigator, it's worth, I think, what is it, dude? $79 a month or something like that?
Between 79 and 99, depending upon what level you get. And then it's cheaper if you pay annually. But the thing is, you can't just buy it. You have to use it. And you have to learn how to use it. So take a class, watch a YouTube video, right? Just buying the thing, just buying a cookbook doesn't teach you how to cook. You have to read it, So, but in addition to what you were just saying about asking for referrals, you can also go for the upsell, right? If you're already a client, you're already purchasing package A, maybe there's some features and benefits that you don't know about. Maybe they're new since the time that you signed on. So it's always good to have just a check-in phone call, or, hey, have you seen we're doing this now? Or just a hello every so often to your existing people, just to make sure they're happy.
Yeah. No, it's good customer service
Yeah,
anyway, right? Like that's sometimes people aren't even expecting that. You can really differentiate yourself just by doing that. Something too about being able to filter in, I want to go back to Sales Navigator for a second,
sure.
but being able to filter your target market and do that effectively saves a lot of time, right? And right now, it seems like the world, it doesn't seem like it. It is speeding up. It is
Yeah,
very fast. And to really be able to keep up with that, you've got to be able to understand how to use the tools. We've been talking about AI like crazy everywhere I go, and I'm sure you're experiencing it in your work. And there's many tools that you can use to really narrow that down and make sure that you're really focused on the right group of people that are going to need your services.
absolutely.
So thank you for bringing up that
Yeah.
tool, and also that you have to learn how to use it. And it's not that, I would say, is not as easy. Like to really get the benefits out of it. Maybe you had an easier time than I did, but I was fumbling around in there for a little bit.
No, I took a class actually. Our local National Apartment Association chapter, they put on a webinar, how to use Sales Navigator as a multifamily supplier. And I went, and it was really informative.
Wow. Wow, that's cool. That's really cool. So I'm going to ask you a question on that. Well, not on that, but right down this line of thinking on sales in general. And I've been having this conversation with owners in particular who are examining their CRM, really looking at, is it efficient? Is it what I need? Is it what my team needs? Is it doing what I need it to do? Are you finding in your world, how do people want to be communicated with? Is it majority text, majority call? Like what are you seeing as the trend in what you're doing?
That's a great question. So I'm finding that almost everyone is completely overwhelmed with the amount of communication on every possible platform and every possible channel at all times of the day. Emails don't even get open sometimes. What you don't want to be is annoying. You want to offer resources and knowledge and guidance and friendship and, be the trusted source so that when there's something going on or, when they think of, I'm having a flood, I'm having a fire, they want your name and your company's name to come to your mind, not because you're annoying and you're in their inbox every day, but because you offered them resources or guides or stopped by with lunch or, asked about their kids. Like it's a lot more relationship building than people think when you're in sales. At least it should be. If you think of the traditional salesperson, they're selling used cars, they're sleazy. Whereas you think of a trusted friend, a trusted partner in whatever industry, who are you going to call in the event that you need something from that person?
Yeah, I'll tell you, that reminds me of just some of the wonderful relationships I've had over the years. And it always came down to not the product that they represented, but how they could help me find the right solution, even if it
Right,
wasn't their solution. And I
right.
still have those buds, that I call on when I'm stuck
Yeah,
and can't figure something out. And, maybe I don't go with their product, or maybe I do go with their product if it's the best solution. But those are the strong relationships.
yeah.
And those are the ones that when I do need to purchase something, guess where I'm going?
Some of my biggest contacts, biggest contracts, biggest accounts came from people that I spent 2+ years just being friends with. Hey, how's it going with the family? Or, oh, I know you're looking for a new job. I saw this thing. Or, let's talk through a problem together. Or maybe we're on a committee together. Let's plan an event. And then all of a sudden, one day, they're like, by the way, do you guys do this? Yes. Great. Let's set up a meeting, figure it all out. And it's like, it's not even a sales thing at that point.
Yeah. I mean, sales gets a bad rap.
It
And I
does.
think, in multifamily, especially, I've worked my whole career to elevate the sales role because I
Yeah.
feel that it is one of the most important roles that we have. And it has been at the lower end of the totem pole. And I know that things are changing now, and I love it. I love that, sales is being seen as the revenue generator of our business, one of them. And it's great. But I know that some of that old baggage comes along with it of
Yeah.
sales tactics. Or you said something else though that I think is really important, and that's the trust factor. And also, you know, just building the relationship, period. When you're getting solicited and it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
They're just trying to get your business, trying to get in your inbox. What are some of the experiences that you've had just on the other side of that when people have been trying to sell you stuff? Like what's just the real turn off to you?
So I'll share about some of my years of property management experience. Property managers, they're generalists. They wear a million hats. They always have to keep track of what's going on. And at the same time, they're also in the middle of the tug of war between the residents and the owner, right? If you make the owner too happy, if you charge everyone out the wazoo, the residents are pissed off, and that's not going to work. And if you make the residents too happy and you give away free rent and concessions and you spend too much money, the owner's not happy, and then you're out of a job, right? So property managers are in a really tough spot where they need to know a little bit about everything and then try to keep opposing parties happy at the same time. And property managers should be able to trust and rely upon their vendors as the experts in whatever particular field is they're in. If I'm calling a pest control company, I want to know that they can get rid of the pests effectively. They should be the best at it, right? Or at least good enough, right? And same thing with every kind of sales relationship. If you're going along, apartmentalize and you meet a vendor on the show floor and they're like, we do everything. We do, this and that. We have software. We could do, we could come to your property and install hardware and we'll pick up your valet trash. And it's like, okay, you guys are doing too much. You're probably not doing any of it really well. And there's always this kind of give and take between, do I go with a single point solution? Do I go with a property management software that can do everything 70% of good enough? Or do I have a whole bunch of individual point solutions and a fraud detection thing and an application thing and a payment thing? And it's really disjointed because I have 1,000 logins, but every single thing is as good as it can be, right? So on the property manager side, what's a turn off from a salesperson? I think the first turn off is someone just insulting your knowledge, right? It's not a good opener to the relationship to say, you're doing X wrong. It's like, okay, doesn't really make me find out anything more about you or your company. It's like, I got enough stuff going on. I don't need you coming in here and telling me I'm doing it all wrong, If you came in and said, hey, there's an opportunity to do it faster, better, cheaper, more efficient, whatever, yeah, maybe you'll catch my attention. But just coming in with an insult is not the way to do it. The second thing is thinking that there's any kind of implied or expressed quid pro quo anything. Right? Just because you brought my company lunch someday or you sent me a tumbler or a t-shirt, that shouldn't matter. I don't owe you anything. I'm going to go with the best option, right? Even if your company went and did a major sponsorship of this or that or whatever, some organization that I volunteer with, if your product or your service isn't worth the money, you're not going to get my money. You can't just buy it. At least that always left a bad taste.
We have a whole nother topic, aren't we? We're going to have you back again so we can continue our series. But we just heard this from one of my coaches. I have a couple. And this one is a sales coach. He's a lot of coaches, but he wears a lot of coaching hats. But he's been really focused on sales as of late. And he said something of, the most important word in sales is why. And going in with questions. To your point, when you're going in with solutions, you have no idea about anything that customer actually needs, and spending the amount of time that it takes to really get to know what that customer needs. I have found that sometimes the customer doesn't even know what they need. So it's going to take even longer to figure out how to help them, right? So having that kind of time and taking that time, wanting to take that time to really get it right. I know I've found that if I take that time, the delivery, I can deliver. I can deliver on what I promised. But if I haven't done my due diligence, I haven't asked all the right questions, I'm going to get surprises. So what am I going to do, right? If I can't handle that particular surprise. So I think that's really good. And you hit on that about, being curious. I mean, someone else in our space he's known for being curious. That's a really great way of going into any, conversation, right? Like just being curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. A lot of people aren't aware of all of the possibilities of what's out there. And you don't know what they know until you ask. If I offer a free service, a free amenity or whatever, I don't know if they even know about it until I say, hey, what are you doing about disaster planning? What knowledge does your team have that would leave with them if they left? What are you doing to capture that? what are some resources that I can provide to help prevent a future problem?
Now, this is such an important area of our business right now, too. I'm just finishing up budgets with one of my clients and, looking at insurance costs and everything else that has occurred. There's a lot that you can prepare for, and then there's a lot you can't prepare for. It just happens, and then you've got to take action and get it fixed, right? I know I'm totally turning the corner here, but now I'm really curious about this. Are you finding right now with all of the disasters that we have been experiencing, what's the climate out there for you? I mean, because that's your business. How are you finding people in general with having to call on you and needing restoration help? I mean, there's got to be a lot of uptick with everything that's been going on.
Yeah, you're not wrong. When I was day-to-day property manager, I had response plans and guides and phone trees and, all these resources that I had created. And when I switched kind of over to the supplier side, somehow in my mind, I thought, oh, everyone must have this, right? Everyone must have disaster response plans and pre-made guides and, buckets of food and like all these things. And pretty quickly, I found out that that is not the case. The number of people that are just completely overwhelmed with dealing with what's going on today and have no time to prepare for what might happen tomorrow, it's a pretty significant amount of the industry. So one of the things that I like to do, and my company does, is we go and we do that disaster planning, right? We'll walk the site, we'll take the photographs, we'll make the documentation, and we'll deliver it to you free of charge. Here you go, right? The only catch is on your documentation, it's going to say, hey, step 1, call 911, and step 2, call us. Right? If you don't call me, I'm never going to find out. But this is a free thing that we have knowledge and expertise in because we do this all day long. Why would you not let one of your vendors come in and take that load off of your plate?
It reminds me of just even from the service end and all the services that our partners provide for us that we don't take advantage of, and like
Absolutely.
stocking and all that stuff. This is very similar to what you're talking about. But going back to our original topic of market niche, I know that when I worked with companies on this in the building phase of their company, it's people struggle with this a little bit on really narrowing it down and making it concise, being able to say exactly who their ideal customer is and the demographics around that customer. And, it's a big exercise. It could take a while, several iterations. Did you have to do that, or do you do that with sales, or have you found that you had to really think about, maybe write down that elevator speech, if you will, of this is my target market and this is who I'm going after as my customer, because this is the right customer for what we offer?
So I'll answer that with a property management story. So, when you're opening up a new apartment community, the world is your oyster. Anyone that can afford the apartment is, at the beginning, that's your target market. And when you start digging into your local area, if you're looking correctly and your ears are open and you're listening, you'll find that there is some subset of the general population that's not being served by the current available apartments in the area. So the company I worked for, we had an apartment community that was opening up. And just like every other luxury apartment community, it was a luxury apartment community. It was new. It was nice, yada, yada. But someone, I don't remember who, but somebody zoomed in on and said, there's really not anywhere around here where you can have more than 2 dogs, or dogs of a certain breed or a certain size or weight or whatever. And if we just got everyone here on board, the maintenance team and the ownership and the insurance, and got everyone on board with the idea that we might have some big dogs of a weird breed, we could probably capture that really, strong subset of the market. And what we did was we went to the local Humane Society, and they actually had it's like a designation called PAW, P-A-W, Pets Are Welcome. And we became the first Pets Are Welcome community in New York State, which means that there's no breed, size, age, or weight restrictions for any dogs. And now, even if that only represents 2% of the population, we had wait lists for years. There was like a 2-year wait list for everyone with a Great Dane and a German Shepherd and a Saint Bernard and a Pit Bull. Anyone that couldn't find housing anywhere else, this was the only option. And because we did that thought and that work to say what part of the market is not being served, the property across the street was the same luxury, the same price, and vacancies. We had wait lists.
You just nailed it. And I think that's a really great tool for people to take back, right? Like if you're going to do your outreach and you're seeking, qualified leads, really looking at, what did you say, the subset that is not being served?
Yep.
That. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's so good. And, for good salespeople that actually love what they do and are trying to go out and solve problems, that's a really wonderful way of thinking of it. And because that's what it is. And I think that what you just said separates sales from, relationships and solving pain points for people. I love that. I love that. Would you say, I don't know, like we don't have too much time left, but I want to get into this just a little bit about maintaining relationships over time. And I know you've just recently made a change, but you've been doing this part of what I'm talking about for a really long time. That nurturing, even though it may not seem like, that's maybe not paying off business wise. How do you really do that and do it well when there's so many people you're contacting, so many people that you're building relationships with? Prioritize that, and how do you do it well?
Sure. That's another great question. Everyone's got their own process for how they do everything. My role is really relationship heavy, and I like to say that I'm having an ongoing conversation with a couple hundred people at the same time. And it might not be every day that I'm talking to them. It might be once every few weeks or a couple months, but it's an ongoing thing, like when we last spoke, it was 6 months ago. And just the other night before we were jumping on the call today, I re-listened to my last podcast appearance so I could remember where we left off and, pick up from there. And in my professional sense, I have spreadsheets. I have a Google sheet. It's got all kinds of notes on it. I use ChatGPT to make it a little bit fancy so it does all the formatting and the phone numbers and it lights up and yada yada. And I kind of set my own internal process that I want to just touch base or reach out like once every 30 days. I think that's not annoying. It's not too much, but it's enough that people get to, have an ongoing relationship with me. And if anyone's ever like, don't call me, then I won't call. No problem, right? No one's ever said, right? So I have my spreadsheet it's literally conditional formatting. It just lights up and says, hey, the last time you talked to this person was December. Reach out. Scroll through their LinkedIn and I'll just say, hey, I saw you're doing this or you're doing that or what's going on or yada yada. And most people are totally fine with a text out of the blue. If they're busy, they'll get back to you later. It's just a text message. And if it's more than that, it's, hey, we haven't seen each other for a while. Let's get coffee. Or how are you? Let's jump on the phone. And it's not hard, but it's one of those things that you have to do consistently, right? As EOS would say, you have to turn the flywheel.
You did it, didn't you? You spoke my language.
I did.
So amazing. Nah, that's a whole nother thing. We got a whole nother show on that one too. Yeah. And what you're saying too is also, it's not just haphazard, right? There's a discipline about this process. And I think, when I talk to salespeople that believe it's all just relational, it's hard for them to grasp what I'm talking about until they've learned the discipline and they can see the fruits of their labor, which is really making the calls, spending the time to do that work that goes into it. What's your take on that? Like that part of the sales process?
So LinkedIn Sales Navigator actually makes this really easy. Because if you just have regular old LinkedIn figures out your algorithm and just shows you what it wants to show you in your newsfeed. But when you have Sales Navigator, you can put specific people or specific companies. You can cultivate your newsfeed so that you're being notified when people that you want to keep up with are doing stuff that's worth talking about. And it's pretty easy to drop a comment, send a note, send a quick message, a voice memo, or even an email. Hey, I saw you're doing cool stuff on LinkedIn, right? I've yet to find anyone that's rebuffed me when I've said, how can I send you leads? How can I send you referrals? Right? It's just a really organic way to open the conversation. And most of the time ends up with them buying you lunch. It's great.
Really utilizing the tools, I think, is really helpful and not, we have to get with the times on some things.
Yeah.
And that is how people want to be communicated with. Well, some market niches, not all of them. But, it's fascinating to just, hear what you're doing now and, in our climate, in our time, what that looks like. How is it different? So I want to thank you for that. But I also want to open it up to you to just tell us how people can get hold of you if they want to dig in deeper to Sales Navigator or find out what you're doing and how it may benefit them. How do they reach you now?
Sure. Best place is on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/David Holland, CPM. I work for Belfour Property Restoration. My geographic area is New York, but Belfour is a global organization. I can connect you with the local office no matter where you are. We're actually in 57 countries. We're the largest restoration company in the world. So no matter where you are, happy to chat, happy to connect you to someone either within my company or someone who I just know in my network. So please do find me on LinkedIn.
This has been as great as it always is in talking with you and just hearing your slant on things, both from being in the multifamily seat and also in your now, what is it, partner seat? Or what are we supposed to call them? Not vendors, right? What's the new term?
Supplier?
Supplier, yeah.
Supplier? We'll go with that.
Right. I want to get it right. So thank you for your time. And we're definitely going to have you back.
Yeah. Hopefully before 6 months this time.
Exactly. I'll reach out before then.
Love it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Elevated, where we hope that you are inspired and ready to go, elevated to take on your next challenge in multifamily. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course, share with your network. And don't forget that this was brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network that is also sharing the latest and greatest in trends, ideas, and content across our multifamily space. Until next time, keep elevating, and we'll talk soon.